And here we go.
Welcome to the Great Work Insights Podcast by the O.C. Tanner Institute, the show that features the people, the professionals, the thought leaders, and the coolest companies. And now your host, the man navigating the discussion about the culture, the organized chaos, and the best practices that compel great work, Todd Nordstrom.
I want to shoot a little off topic for a second today. I just saw that there was a Friends television cast reunion recently on TV. Ross, Joey, Monica, Rachel, Phoebe, and so on. I only caught highlights of the reunion show, but I did find something intriguing that I didn't expect. Not that I was a huge fan of Friends by any stretch of the imagination, but a handful of actors at the reunion were from other television shows. There were stars from Cheers, Will and Grace, Big Bang Theory, and the list could go on. All were stars who worked under the direction of one Mr. James Burrows, an icon in the TV industry. And when I saw this, I thought, is James Burrows that good at directing, or is he that good at finding talent? I could list other people like Burrows in the entertainment industry who seem to know how to pick the right people. Take L.A. Reid, the CEO of Epic Records and former host of The X Factor. He's overseen the launch of names like Mariah Carey, Beyonce, Pink, Justin Bieber, and the list could go on and on and on. How does L.A. Reid see that level of potential? Potential is kind of a funny word. If you really stop to think about it, it can simply mean that there is a chance for someone to become great. But isn't that the case with all of us, everyone? And inside the normal workspaces of the corporate world, is potential as easy to spot as it is maybe like in these entertainment worlds? My guest today, it's an honor to have on the show. He surely can spread some light on this concept that we all call potential. In fact, when he talks about it, the concept almost seems to take on a new life. Known to the business world as the king of performance-based recruiting, Lou Adler is iconic for his thought leadership. He's a best-selling author and a go-to consultant for many of the world's most respected companies. Lou, it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Hey, Todd, delighted to be here. And I'm interested in your topic of potential as well.
I want to pick your brain about potential in employees, potential in leaders, potential in cultures. But before we go there, I want to backtrack a bit to a concept that you championed many years ago that's obviously proven its weight, performance-based recruiting. Explain that to the audience. What is it?
Well, the big thing about performance-based hiring or performance-based recruiting is the idea that let's drop skills, experiences, behaviors, competencies, and screening assessments, all that stuff. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because a lot of the best people won't go through all that stuff, and a lot of the best people don't have the skills and experiences. But they have something better, which is performance. They've done comparable work. They've been stretched. They've succeeded. They've demonstrated leadership. They've demonstrated potential. So, and those people tend to be far above average. The average people are the ones who have all the experience and all the skills. That's what makes them average. The best people get promoted more quickly, so they have less of the skills. I mean, most people don't think of it that way. So the idea of performance-based hiring is let's find people who are true performers, who've got the leadership skills and got the potential to excel, and let's find people like that who want to do the work you want done. So that, in a nutshell, that's what performance-based hiring is.
That's fascinating, especially because we look at, 2 years of experience compared to 10 years, and we automatically assume that the 10 years is better.
It could be, but generally speaking, it's not. And in fact, I just spoke with a person looking for project managers to handle big, giant construction projects, $50 to $100 million. And I asked how much experience they have, and he said 10 to 15 years. I said, so if I found somebody who could handle a $100 million project and successfully handled it, negotiated all the deals, got it done on time, had 5 or 6 years experience, because the person was just great at it, you wouldn't want to hire that person? He said, no, can we see him tonight? It was the point is when you phrase it that way, the world changes. So you got to so that's the idea. Let's focus on performance. If they've done the work and done comparable work, I guarantee they got the skills and experience necessary. It's what people do with what they have that makes them successful, not what they have. So that's the big thing I say. Is performance captures everything.
That's fascinating. Okay, so let's talk about potential for a second. I want to play devil's advocate. I remember being young in my career and people patting me on the back and saying, "You've got potential, kid," and I never quite understood what to do with that. What did it mean? Is potential the simple fact that someone believes a person can become something great? What is it?
Well, let's say this. I'm not going to get into the psychological aspects of it, but I certainly know how to assess it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something different. So when I assess a person, so I kind of have to give you a little bit of detail of this.
Sure.
I have what I call the anchor and visualize questioning pattern. I ask candidates to solve a job-related problem. How would you, hey, we got a $100 million construction project that's behind schedule. If you were to get this job, how would you figure out what the problem is, and could you put together a plan to get back on schedule? And I ask the candidate to see if they understand and they can visualize the problem and have enough insight and enough experience and skills to solve it. It's not just brain teaser. It's, hey, this is reality. This is what's going to happen next week if you get this job.
Mm-hmm.
However, just being able to figure out the problem is not all that comforting. It's not unimportant, but visualizing. Then I ask the second question. I said, okay, what have you done that's most similar? And I would expect it of somebody to handle a $70 or $80 or $90 million project to do that. This is bigger, but they have enough capability to figure it out. So I call that the anchor and visualize problem, which is the ability to visualize a problem and having done something similar that gives you confidence that they can achieve what they said they could do. From my aspect of potential, I start making a, so let's assume that you, Todd, told me that. You did it. I said, well, what about if we had this situation where we had a long lead time product or whatever it was, something fell apart, made the problem more complicated. And I want to see, well, if we did that, I'd have to take into consideration A, B, C, and D. And then I'd have to look at the trade-off between here and here from a cost and a time delivery standpoint. I have to negotiate with the vendor of this. I'm listening for words. Can you visualize how to handle that more complicated problem? I can then make the problem even more and more complicated until your thinking falls apart, where you stop going from specific, yes, I do know how to answer that, I'm going to now, you're becoming more vague as the problem becomes more complicated. At that point in time, I've reached your current level of potential, your understanding of how to solve that problem. Now, we've done that with camp counselors at the YMCA handling 12-year-old kids. They said, hey, what if you had a kid who wasn't engaged? What if you had a problem with a kid who was having a fight? What if you have a problem with a person actually was sitting in a corner? And you can, no matter what the problem is, if it's realistic, I find out what's the person's potential to handle that situation and what's their current level of potential. So it doesn't matter what the job is. I figure out what's a real problem, what have you done that's most similar, then I make the problem more and more complicated to see if you have the wherewithal to at least visualize it. What I've discovered is everybody in any job can visualize what they can do. They can visualize what they don't know, and they know how to figure it out. But I also want people to have figured something related out. So that's what my definition of potential. Long answer, but it's not a simple question to answer. What is potential? The ability to grow and develop and take on work that you haven't done before.
No, I like that. And, it's interesting. I just read a blog post from you not too long ago that talked about potential in leadership. And when you just gave that explanation about, visualizing maybe a project or what have you, how do you do this with potential in leadership, leading people? You actually instruct people in companies on how to spot potential in leadership. Can you give us some of your secrets? It's
actually the same thing. In my mind, leadership is exactly what I said. It's the ability to visualize a problem, articulate the problem, look at and evaluate the trade-offs, and select the appropriate course of action, and getting the resources and marshaling the people involved to that vision. But to make the vision realistic, you also have to execute properly. So the visualization is, okay, walk me through how you put your plan. Tell me what you've accomplished. So in my mind, leadership is the ability to visualize a solution and execute it successfully. And you can look at the presidential candidates. I'm not going to get political here because I don't know when they're going to listen to this. But you can listen to people visualize the future, and then you ask them, hey, what have you done that's most similar? Few people have them both, sad to say. But in a real world of hiring, that's what I'm looking for. Leadership is the ability to, in my mind, it's the combination of visualization of problem, putting a plan together, and then marshaling the resources and successfully executing that plan. That's my definition of leadership.
Lou, a lot of listeners to this show are already familiar with you. They're HR leaders, talent development people, C-suite types. But I know there's also some frontline managers who are really, spending most of their days just trying to get the work done, and get their teams to get the work done. If a frontline manager is listening to this, wondering what are they supposed to do to look for when it comes to potential in talent, do you have any advice? Is it all the same across all levels in an organization?
Well, it's not the same, but it's all comparable. So I give you a story, and I think I wrote about this recently because it happened about 20, 25 years ago. I was at some meeting, and I quite frankly don't remember the meeting, but I had started this methodology of performance-based hiring as part of our recruiting practice. Mm-hmm. So I often was asked to speak at business groups, and I know I was talking to one, could have been YPO or Vistage, I don't remember that. But a few weeks later, one of the company presidents called me up and says, Lou, what are your two favorite questions? And I said, well, tell me what the job is. He said, I don't have time. I said, well, do you want me to come out there? I said, I don't have time. It turned out, to make matters short, is the owner had a manufacturing facility, and his VP operations candidate was in the office. So he called me. He didn't know how to interview. The guy was getting ready to interview, and it was a minute later. I said, well, don't have the interview in the office. Go out into the plant and stop at any workstation you have where there's a problem. Describe the problem to the candidate and ask him, in this case it was a him, how he would solve it. And spend 5 or 10 minutes questioning him why he made this choice, why would you do that, what would you do if this happened, how would he cost it out. Just ask a bunch of questions, but you're trying to understand the thinking process of the person and have the person ask you questions. Then ask him if he's done anything similar. So that's the anchor and visualize. I said then go around 2 or 3 other places, and it should probably take you an hour, hour and a half to do that, and you'll know if you have a good candidate at the end. Well, he calls me back about 2 hours later, says, Lou, great interview. The candidate was great at figuring out how to solve a problem, but his implementation, he didn't have a lot of experience implementing anything. So I concluded that the guy was a good staff guy, but I'm a little bit concerned the risk factor because he just wasn't comfortable in a union environment and operations, really getting hands-on. He was more of the consultant type, and I might actually hire him for a consultant to do it, but I'm not going to hire him for the VP operations. Well, any manager can do that. You got an engineering design problem. Okay, I got a problem here. Todd, how would you solve it? Have you ever done anything similar? You got an accounting problem. Hey, we got to put a new manufacturing or a new financial report together. What things should we consider in this report, and how are we going to get the data? Have you ever done anything similar? Hey, we got to launch a product next week, and we don't have enough material coming in. How would you do it? So what I say to any line manager, what is this person going to do? What are the 2 or 3 things this person has to do to be successful? Ask them if they've done anything similar, and then ask them how they'd do it in this job. Or it doesn't matter which the anchor and visualize, the order of it doesn't matter. But what does matter is, hey, walk me through how you'd solve the problem. What have you done that's most similar? I call that the do, think pattern. I want people to have a track record of accomplishing something comparable, but also at least can think through some of the more difficult problems and can articulate that and understand, hey, how do I actually solve the problem? What I'm trying to do is get at their thinking skills, their right brain creative thinking skills, and their left brain accomplishment skills. You put them both together, they get a good track record of someone who's capable. One without the other is a recipe for disaster. Then you can make the problem a little bit harder to see what the person's current potential is. So that's how I'd answer the question.
So is this something that we could do for ourselves? Let's think about younger workers for a second, or people that are maybe in jobs that are misfits, or people that are just, they're really curious about their own potential in the workplace. Can you do this process for yourself?
That's a great question. Let me say, my immediate reaction as you asking me the question was no, because you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. They certainly didn't have the confidence, so maybe this would be so let me kind of think this, and this is the first time I've ever heard that question, Todd, so I'm thinking on my feet, so to speak, here.
Okay.
If I was looking at it, it's okay, how would I solve, so I'm a manager of some business. How could I become a director of this business? What issues would I need to know? The issues are, though, you don't know what you don't know. So because I'm evaluating so many candidates, or have over the years, mm-hmm. literally hundreds, if not thousands. So there's actually a progression of how people become successful. They become successful because they become a subject matter expert. They then handle small projects. They integrate systems. They then integrate people on top of that. They then become multifunctional. They can deal with engineering, accounting, manufacturing. They then become strategic. They see the big business. I know that because I've interviewed so many people. But if you're in that position at one of those levels, you don't know what you don't know. But you certainly could fit. So I don't know. That's still a fair answer. My judgment is you probably could figure out how to do it one level above and articulate the vision. But who knows if you're right or not? Sure. It would be someone who is above you to say, okay, yeah, that is a pretty good solution. So maybe that's what it is. You put together a plan together, and you've done something. What's the biggest thing I've done? Articulate that and write that out. The biggest thing I've done. Break it down into management issues, leadership issues, organizational and system issues, and put that together and say, hey, how could I have done this better? And then start thinking a little bit bigger. So maybe that's the way you would do it, but it's still a very fair question. I just don't see it as a something that would be totally reasonable other than just a guideline for moving forward.
Fascinating conversation. Lou, I've followed you for many, many years. You are a content producer, a thought leader. You've got more information online than I think than anyone I know. I know you've also written many books and offer a wealth of information on your website. If listeners want to learn more about you, what you do, your books, where can they find you?
Well, they go to performancebasedhiring.com, and go to the resource section. There's a bunch of free tools, free articles. You even go down to the article and search on some articles. And we have a bunch of articles written for job seekers, recruiters, hiring managers, and company executives. So there is a wealth of information there. In some level, it's probably all the same stuff repurposed in different ways, but it's how does the world of hiring work? And we're starting to do some work with Harvard now because they're starting to discover that what I talk about actually does work. I wish you called me 20 years ago, but so be it. I'm still glad that it's out there. So hopefully that's been helpful. My latest book, The Essential Guide for Hiring and Getting Hired, kind of summarizes everything. Obviously you can find it on Amazon, but it really offers guidance to recruiters, hiring managers, and candidates even to what to do if they're being unfairly assessed. So I think that's kind of an important issue from a job seeker standpoint, to make sure they're assessed properly. Unfortunately, more times than not, they're not. So that would be helpful guidance for them.
Explain that a little bit. That's interesting. What do you mean by that, unfairly assessed?
Well, quite frankly, so you're a candidate being interviewed for a job. Mm-hmm. You know right away if the hiring manager is making a judgment because he or she likes you. Yeah. But what I always tell candidates is, are you being judged fairly on what you can do? So quickly, you ask a forced choice question. Hey, Todd, what's the, can you tell me a little about the job? What are you really looking for? Because I'll like to give you some examples of work that I've done. So the idea is to force the hiring manager to ask you correct questions so you can answer them. Obviously, you're not going to say, hey, I understand you need someone who can design rocket ships. Mm-hmm. And you can't design rocket ships, so that would be a pretty stupid question to ask. But hey, do you need someone who can really do some cost trade-off analysis on implementing robotic equipment into your facility? Oh yeah, I do. Have you ever done it? Yes, I have. Obviously, so it's it's a leading question, but getting the manager to focus on what really needs to be done. So that's really the idea of the book, and it was hard to write because I was trying to take the position of the recruiter, the manager, and the candidate, and putting everybody having equal information. So I think we kind of pulled it off, though.
Interesting. Good stuff. Honor having you on the show. Lou, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks very much, Todd. Hopefully it was helpful.
O.C. Tanner has helped the world's top companies improve innovation through employee recognition. Learn what insights are in store for your company. Visit octanner.com today.